I've always believed a parent's love should be unconditional. I gave everything I had to raise my son, hoping that one day he'd look back and see how much I sacrificed for him. But sometimes the people you give your whole world to forget that you even have one of your own. That night, when everything changed, I was sitting alone at home. My son Daniel had invited me to dinner. He said he wanted a family evening. I thought maybe we were finally reconnecting. It had been months since he'd visited. His wife Olivia sounded cheerful on the phone. I even told her I'd bring dessert, apple pie, Daniel's favorite, since he was 10. I got dressed in my best jacket, the one my late wife used to say made me look respectable. I remember smiling at the mirror, telling myself, this will be good. When I reached their house, the lights were bright, the table already set, wine glasses lined up like soldiers waiting for orders. Olivia opened the door. Her smile looked painted on. "Evening," I said, holding up the pie. "Right on time," she said, taking it. She turned before I could step inside fully. Daniel appeared behind her, wearing a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad, good to see you." We sat down. The food looked perfect, but the air felt too thick. They talked about their renovations, their new car, and a vacation they wanted to take. Then Olivia cleared her throat. "Actually," she said, "there's something important we wanted to ask." I looked up, still chewing. "What's that?" "The house," she said casually. "The one you live in, it's still under your name. Daniel and I were wondering if you'd be open to transferring it to us. It would make refinancing easier." I stared at her. "Refinancing?" "That house is fully paid off," Daniel jumped in. "It's just paperwork, Dad. You said one day it'd be mine anyway." I wiped my mouth with the napkin. "I said one day. Not today." Olivia leaned forward, her smile disappearing. "Don't be selfish, Robert. You're retired. You don't need a whole house to yourself." That word selfish hit me harder than I expected. I looked at my son. "You think I'm being selfish?" He didn't look at me. He just swirled the wine in his glass. "It's not like that. We just thought," Olivia cut him off. "You're holding on to something you don't even use. We could make it better, modernize it. You'd still be welcome to visit." "Visit my own home." I set my fork down. "You both seem to have made a lot of plans for something that isn't yours." Olivia laughed, sharp and humorless. "There it is. The guilt trip. You always play the martyr, don't you?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Let's not make this a big deal." I felt my pulse rise. "A big deal? You're asking me to sign away my home." Olivia stood, grabbed her wine glass, and before I could react, she tossed it. The wine splashed across my shirt, dark red, cold, humiliating. Daniel froze. I looked at him, waiting. He said nothing. Not a word. Slowly I took my napkin, wiped my face, and stood up. My voice came out calm, too calm. "You're right, Olivia. It's time I stopped holding on to things," she smirked. "Good. So I pulled my phone from my pocket. "Grant," I said when my lawyer answered. "It's Robert. I need you to update my will and property deeds. Tonight." Olivia blinked. "You're calling your lawyer? Over dinner?" "Yes," I said. "Apparently this dinner was about business, not family. So let's make it official." Daniel tried to stand. "Dad, come on." "Sit down," I told him quietly. "You've said enough." I walked to the door. The wine soaked through the fabric, sticky and cold, but I felt strangely clean inside. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't need to. Some endings don't need noise, they just need clarity. Outside, the night air bit at my face. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. When I got home that night, the smell of wine still clung to my shirt. I hung it up instead of washing it, like a reminder some lessons are better learned cold. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. The phone glowed beside me. Grant, my lawyer, was the kind of man who never asked unnecessary questions. We'd known each other for years. He handled the paperwork when I sold my old shop after retirement. He picked up almost instantly. "Robert, you don't usually call this late. What happened?" "Let's just say my son reminded me it's time to protect what's left of me," I said. Grant's tone turned serious. "You want to update your will?" "Yes, and the house deeds. I'm removing any verbal agreements tied to Daniel or his wife. I want the property held under my trust. If anything happens to me, it goes directly to charity, the Veterans Fund, and the local shelter." "That's a big move," he said. "So was raising a son on my own," I replied. He chuckled softly. "All right. Come by tomorrow morning? We'll make it official." When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. It's strange how peace doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from finally standing still while everyone else keeps spinning. The next morning, I ironed a clean shirt, drove downtown, and parked outside Grant's office. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile. The smell of coffee and paper filled the room. Grant waved me in. "You look calm," he said. "I've been angry for 20 years, I told him. "Calm feels new. We went over everything." He asked if I wanted to leave anything for Daniel. I thought about it for a moment. "A letter," I said. "Not money, not property, just words." He nodded, wrote something on his pad, then looked up. "You're doing the right thing." The law's cleanest when the heart finally is, too. I signed the papers. Each signature felt like a door closing behind me. When I stepped outside, the city noise felt different, less sharp, less intrusive. I walked to the cafe across the street, ordered black coffee, and sat near the window. For the first time, I wasn't planning my son's future. I was reclaiming mine. By afternoon, my phone was full of missed calls, Daniel, Olivia, unknown numbers. I ignored them. Around sunset, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Daniel stood there. He looked smaller somehow, his confidence deflated. "Dad," he said, "we need to talk." "About the house?" I asked. His eyes flickered. "About what happened. Olivia was out of line, I know that, but you didn't have to." "I didn't have to what?" I interrupted. "Protect what's mine." He shifted uncomfortably. "You're overreacting." "Overreacting is when someone throws wine at you and you laugh it off. I reacted just enough," he sighed. "Olivia's upset. She says you're trying to punish us. Punishment is giving someone what they deserve. I'm just giving myself what I need." He didn't know what to say. For a second, I saw the boy he used to be, the kid who'd cry when he broke his toys, the kid who used to promise he'd always take care of me when I got old. I said quietly, "Daniel, when your mother died, I made you my whole world. I forgot that I still needed one of my own. That was my mistake." His voice cracked. "Dad, I didn't mean—" "Maybe not," I said. "But intentions don't undo actions." He nodded slowly. "So what now?" "Now," I said, "you live your life. I'll live mine." He stood there a moment longer, then left. I watched his car disappear down the street. I didn't feel victorious, just empty, in a quiet, necessary way. Later that week, I got a letter from the shelter confirming the property documents had been registered. My home was officially protected. It felt strange. My life had been about giving for so long that keeping something for myself felt almost rebellious. A few evenings later, Grant called again. "Everything's legally sealed, Robert. No one can contest the trust now." "Good," I said. "That's all I needed," he hesitated. "You're not angry?" "No," I replied. "Anger's just energy without direction." I finally gave mine a job. The next morning, the sun hit my window in a way I hadn't noticed before. The house felt different, lighter, safer. I made coffee, opened the curtains, and let the day come in without hesitation. When I checked my phone again, there was one text from Daniel. "I'm sorry. I just need time to figure things out." I typed back, "Take all the time you need, son." Then I put the phone away. Some people spend their lives waiting for closure. Sometimes you just have to write it yourself. A week later, I woke up to the sound of rain against the windows. The kind of rain that doesn't roar, it whispers. I sat on the couch with my coffee, watching the gray sky and listening to the world slow down. For the first time in a long while, the silence didn't feel heavy. Then the phone buzzed. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I knew before answering. Olivia's voice came through, sharp and rehearsed. "You made a mistake, Robert. You can't just cut us off like this." "I didn't cut anyone off," I said. "I simply stopped being your safety net." "You think a few papers can stop us?" "Daniel's name is on everything." "Not anymore." There was a pause, then the sound of a nervous laugh. "You'll regret this." "No," I said, calm and quiet. I already regretted letting it go on this long. I hung up. That night I called Grant and told him to document the call. He did without question. "You're handling this better than most people would," he said. "I'm not angry anymore," I told him. "I'm tired, and tired people don't fight. They finish things." A few days later, Daniel came over. His eyes were red, his voice shaking. "She's gone, Dad. Took the credit cards, cleaned out our joint account. Said she deserves compensation." I just nodded. I'm sorry, son. He looked at me, searching for judgment. You're not surprised? No, I said. When people show you their greed once, believe them the first time. He sank into the chair opposite me. I don't know what to do. Start over, I said. It's the one thing we always forget we can do. For a long time, he didn't speak. The clock ticked softly between us. Then he said, She told me I was nothing without her. Maybe she's right. I leaned forward. You were something before her, Daniel. You just forgot. Remember now, he rubbed his face with both hands. I hurt you. I let her hurt you. How do I fix that? You can't fix the past, I said. You can only make sure it doesn't repeat itself, he nodded slowly. I want to be better. Then start by being honest with yourself first. After he left, I sat alone for a while. There was no satisfaction in his pain, only relief that the truth had finally done its job. Truth doesn't shout. It just waits for you to stop lying. Over the next few weeks, Daniel came by often. Sometimes we painted the porch, sometimes we didn't talk at all. Healing doesn't always need words. Sometimes it just needs presence. Then, one evening, he brought an envelope. Divorce papers, he said. She's suing for alimony, claiming emotional distress. I almost smiled. Of course she is. Grant handled the rest. 2 weeks later, he called me. The judge threw out her claim. Your son's protected under the prenuptial clause you advised years ago. You must have seen this coming. I didn't see it, I said. I just knew who she was. After the call, I sat on the porch, watching the sunset bleed into the lake. I thought about everything that had happened, the wine, the humiliation, the silence. Funny thing about peace, it rarely looks heroic. It looks like sitting alone and realizing you don't owe explanations anymore. Daniel called again that night. Dad, I'm free. She signed the final documents. That's good, I said. He hesitated. Can I come over? Always, he arrived half an hour later, carrying takeout and 2 cups of coffee. We ate quietly. He looked around the house, the same one that had once caused all this pain, and said, I don't deserve to be here. Then earn it, I said. Not through property, through character, he nodded. I will. Later, when he left, I found a folded note on the table. It said, Thank you for saving me, even when I didn't know I needed saving. I kept that note inside my journal. The next morning, Grant called again. Olivia's lawyer reached out. She wants to settle privately. Apparently, she underestimated how solid your paperwork was. Let her settle, I said. I'm not interested in revenge. I just want quiet. You'll have it, he replied. He was right. The weeks that followed were quiet. No phone calls, no drama, no noise, just quiet days of routine. I'd go to the park, feed the ducks, fix the loose fence post behind the house. Sometimes Daniel joined me. Other times he called just to ask how I was. The relationship we'd lost somewhere along the years was finding its way back, piece by piece. One evening he asked, Do you ever wish Mom were still here? She'd know what to do, I smiled faintly. She is here. Every time we do the right thing instead of the easy thing, she's here. He looked away, eyes glistening. I hope she'd forgive me. She already has, I said. She raised you to learn, not to be perfect. We sat there watching the last light fade from the sky. The world felt heavier than before, but in a way that made sense, like carrying something you finally understand. Later that night, I took out the old wine-stained shirt from the closet. The red mark had faded after so many washes, but a faint trace still remained. I ran my hand over it and smiled. It no longer looked like a stain. It looked like proof that pain can't last longer than the lesson it teaches. I folded the shirt carefully and put it away for good. Spring arrived slow, like the world was finally willing to forgive itself. The grass outside my porch grew thick again, the lake thawed, and the air smelled of wet soil and second chances. Daniel started showing up more often, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to. Sometimes he brought coffee. Sometimes he just sat with me, both of us watching the light change across the water without saying a word. One morning he handed me an envelope. Inside was a small check, his first steady paycheck since everything fell apart. It's not much, he said, but it's honest. I'm working construction. I like it, I nodded, smiling. Proud of you, son, he shrugged. You shouldn't be. I messed everything up before I even started. Everyone does, I said. The trick is not staying broken. He looked down at his hands. You really forgave me? Forgiveness isn't something you say once, I told him. It's something you keep choosing. He nodded slowly, eyes red. I'm choosing it too. That afternoon, we fixed the old garden fence together. The boards creaked, the hammer echoed, but it felt good, like building something new on top of something old that had survived. In the evenings, he'd sometimes stay for dinner. We talked about everything and nothing, the neighbors, the weather, even sports again. Laughter crept back into the house, one joke at a time. The kind of laughter that doesn't hide pain anymore, it carries it gently. Then one day he said, I ran into Olivia at the market. I froze for a moment, then said, How did that go? She looked tired, angry still, but mostly tired. She said she wished you'd never called that lawyer. I smiled faintly. That call saved both of us. She just doesn't know it. She said I ruined her life. She ruined her own, I replied softly. You just stopped helping. He stared at the table for a while, then whispered, I almost believed her once. I thought money meant love. That security meant peace. What do you think now? He looked up at me. Now I think peace is when you stop needing to win. I reached across the table, squeezed his hand and said, Then you're already ahead of most people. A few days later, he surprised me again. Dad, the shelter you donate to, they need volunteers, right? Always. I want to help. I didn't say much, just smiled. The next week, he came along. Watching him carry boxes, joke with the women there, make them laugh, it did something to me. For years, I'd seen him through the lens of disappointment. That day, I saw him as a man finally unlearning his arrogance, replacing it with humility. Later, as we drove home, he said quietly, You were right. Giving feels better than taking, I chuckled. Took you 35 years to figure that out. He laughed too. It was a real laugh, deep, free, like the sound of healing. That night, as I sat alone, I realized something. Revenge had never been the goal. What I wanted all along wasn't for them to suffer, it was for me to stop suffering. When you let go of control, the world starts working with you again. Weeks turned into months. Daniel moved into a small apartment nearby. Every Sunday he came over for dinner. We'd grill outside, talk about ordinary things, nothing dramatic anymore. Sometimes he'd bring a cake, sometimes flowers for the table. The past still existed between us, but it had softened. One Sunday he said, You ever think about Mom? Every day, I said. But thinking about her doesn't hurt anymore, he smiled. I'm glad. She'd be proud of you, I said. He looked down, then met my eyes. Only because you didn't give up on me. I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, the same boy I'd once carried on my shoulders, now a man finally carrying his own weight. Before he left that night, he stood by the door and said, You know, I get it now. What you did that night, the call you made. It wasn't about money or anger. It was about respect, I nodded. Respect starts at home. I just had to remind myself of that. After he drove away, I sat outside, listening to the soft hum of crickets. The sky was full of stars, the kind that make you believe the universe isn't chaos, just misunderstood order. The phone buzzed, a message from Grant. All paperwork cleared, final verification complete. The trust is fully secured. No further actions needed, I typed back. Thank you, old friend. For helping me start over, he replied. You didn't start over, Robert. You just finally started living for yourself. I put the phone down and looked out at the lake, silver under the moonlight. He was right. For years, I'd measured my life by what I'd given away. But maybe the real story began the moment I learned to keep something for myself, my dignity, my peace, my voice. The next morning, I made breakfast for one and smiled at how quiet the house was. The kind of quiet that feels earned. Summer came early that year. The mornings grew longer, the air smelled of cut grass, and for once, I didn't dread waking up alone. I'd built a life around other people's expectations for so long that silence used to feel like punishment. Now it felt like company. Daniel still came every Sunday. Sometimes we cooked, sometimes we just sat outside with coffee, both of us watching the lake shimmer in the heat. There wasn't much left to fix between us, just time, doing its quiet work. One evening, he showed up with a small box. What's this? I asked. Something I thought you'd like, he said. Inside was a silver pen. On it, engraved in small, neat letters, the call that changed everything. I looked up, smiling. You remembered? I'll never forget, he said. That night, when you called your lawyer. I hated you for it. I thought you'd turned against me. But now I know you were saving me from the person I was becoming. I nodded slowly. Sometimes you have to lose someone to find yourself. I just didn't know it would be you. He sat down beside me. You think Mom would have forgiven me? I stared at the lake for a long time before answering. Your mother believed forgiveness isn't a gift. It's a responsibility. If she were here, she'd tell you to forgive yourself first. He exhaled, half smiling. I'm trying. That's all she'd ask. We sat there till the sun dipped low and the sky turned orange. Then he stood, hugged me, and said, I'm proud to be your son. It had been years since I'd heard those words. They stayed with me long after his car disappeared down the road. A week later, the shelter invited me to a small dinner. They wanted to thank me for my donations and the literacy program Daniel now helped run. I didn't want speeches or attention, but I went anyway. When I walked in, the room fell silent for a second. Then they started clapping. I wasn't used to applause. I'd spent most of my life in the background. But that night, I let myself feel it. Afterward, one of the younger volunteers came up to me. You know, she said, everyone talks about that story you told, the one about standing up for yourself. It's given people courage, I smiled. It's not courage, I said. It's clarity, she frowned. What do you mean? Courage is what you need when you're afraid. Clarity is what you get when you finally stop being afraid. She nodded slowly. That makes sense. When I got home, I took the old wine-stained shirt out of the closet one last time. The faint red mark was still there, a shadow of humiliation turned into a badge of survival. I folded it carefully and placed it in a wooden box beside the silver pen. I wrote a small note and slipped it in. Proof that peace is earned, not given. That night I sat on the porch watching the stars. The world around me was quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't demand anything. My life had narrowed down to simple things: morning coffee, phone calls from my son, laughter that didn't cost me anything to make. I thought back to that dinner months ago, to Olivia's laughter, to the sting of the wine, to the phone in my hand. Sometimes a single decision splits your life into before and after. For me, that call did it. Before, I was surviving. After, I started living. I picked up my journal and began writing. Not about anger or betrayal, those pages were full long ago, but about grace. About how life doesn't always give you what you deserve, but it gives you chances to become who you should have been all along. I wrote, peace doesn't shout. It whispers, you're free now. The clock ticked softly behind me. Somewhere across town, Daniel was probably asleep, dreaming of new things instead of old mistakes. That thought made me smile. The next morning, I went for a walk through the park. The air was cool, the trees heavy with green. A small boy ran past me chasing a paper airplane. His laughter echoed through the open space, pure and unstoppable. I stopped to watch him, realizing how long it had been since I'd laughed like that. I took a deep breath, tilted my face toward the sun, and let out a small laugh of my own. It felt good. Later that day, I got a message from Daniel. Dinner tonight? My place. I replied, wouldn't miss it. When I arrived, he had candles on the table, 2 plates, and, this time, sparkling water instead of wine. He grinned. Symbolic, he said. Smart, I said. And safe. We ate, talked, and laughed until late. Before I left, he walked me to the door. Dad, he said, thank you for not giving up on me. I looked at him for a long moment. That's what fathers do. We hold the line until our sons learn how, he smiled. You did more than hold it. You showed me where it was. Driving home that night, I felt light. The road stretched ahead, clear, endless. Somewhere between the yellow lines and the hum of the tires, I realized something. Revenge hadn't saved me. Boundaries had. When I got home, I stepped out onto the porch one last time before bed. The moon hung low, quiet, forgiving. I whispered into the night, I'm done fighting. I'm home, and I meant it, because peace isn't a reward. It's a decision.